Hello. I'm going to be dealing with the Ukraine question in logic. So if you want to hear logic being used about the situation in Ukraine, stick around. And I was prompted to that by two comments, well, not two comments, but two specific points that came up again and again in the comments. The first one was from people saying, I'm sorry to see you've got so many trolls on your channel. Yeah, I'm sorry too, but yeah, c'est la vie. And the other thing was that people kept saying, you don't know what you're talking about. And there's a third thing, because a lot of comments had to do with me getting all my information from MSM, and which is just about the most sexist and ageist thing I think I've had hurled at me in a long time, because, you know, you see an older woman and you think, oh, she sits there all day reading the Daily Telegraph. Not so. I do read the Daily Telegraph. I also read the Guardian. I read the Express. I read the Evening Standard. I read the Metro. I even read the Independent sometimes, and believe me, that is painful. Okay, but I also read stuff from various universities, because I am a university person and I have access to university publications as well. And they're the ones I go for when I need specific technical information. Also, I consult sites like Bellingcat, which are, Bellingcat is just amazing. All right, that's where I get my information from. So all those of you who want to say, oh, you're getting too much information from the MSM, no, that's dealt with those. Now, I was riding my horse through the woods the other day, and I was thinking I'm rather dismissing those people who, I confess, a lot of people who say this didn't happen or that didn't happen in Ukraine, I've sort of dismissed out of hand, a bit like I'd dismiss a flat earther. But it occurred to me, as I said, while I was out on my horse, that, you know, there's nothing like a ride through the woods to clear your mind and give you some perspective on life. It occurred to me, what if those guys are right? I mean, even the maddest conspiracy theory has some truth in it. And some things that were supposed to have been conspiracy theories actually were true. So I should address these arguments more respectfully. And that's what I decided to do. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt of, you know, actually knowing what you're talking about and approach your arguments with a certain sort of logic. So I decided to go through the arguments and test them. The problem is that we're a little bit cast adrift, aren't we? Because whatever proof I might give in the way of news reports and such like would have to be refuted as false, seeing as the media are not reliable. And that's a little bit of a problem, because none of us has wings and can fly over the area and see things exactly as they are. And that's what I've been puzzling over for a while. Oh, by the way, I want to tell you, I won't be making a video for another couple of days because, well, family, holidays, all the rest of it, and I won't have time, probably. Let's get back to how I can justify my opinions on the Ukraine, because I haven't changed my opinions. And I doubt I'll change yours, but I just want to approach the argument from a slightly different angle. How do you do this without resorting to the media? So, well, to start with, let's talk about the media, should we? I've previously said that I noticed, especially in US media, a habit that really irritates me. Is where the so-called interviewer doesn't ask questions. What the interviewer does is feeds the interviewee a line which tells the interviewee how he or she is supposed to answer. It's very often a very long line and goes round and round and round, quoting facts and figures. This isn't a question. It's like the straight man in a double act. And of course, you know what the interviewee is going to say before the interviewee even opens his or her mouth, because the interviewer has already put the whole argument to them. Obviously, that person was chosen specifically to answer in a specific sort of way to a statement which is disguised as a question. This is particularly rampant in the USA so far. I've no doubt it'll come over to Britain as well, but so far it's particularly marked in America. Hang on a minute. Oh, this wretched thing keeps pulling on my ear. It really irritates me. Where was I? And yeah, well, that's why I understand why so many Americans distrust the media. It is so blatantly obvious how skewed it is. The BBC is also skewed, but it's a lot more subtle. You have to be careful of that too. Let's have a quick look at the media in the matter of the present situation. For instance, we know about the Azov battalion. For those of you who are new to this channel, that's started out, it's not supposed to be now, but who knows, a fascist organisation of terrorists who prowled the eastern part of the Ukraine looking for ethnic Russians to kill. The Azov still has ultra-nationalist ideas, and you can make the argument that they responded to the Russian invasion of Donbass, Luhansk and Crimea by going around murdering Russians, settlers, they regarded as invaders on their borders. And the argument one of the arguments the Russians use for invading was to save the ethnic Russians from genocide. So there are two separate issues in what I just said. The first is that the Azov battalion has been murdering ethnic Russians. And the second is that the Russians invaded in order to stop the victimization of said ethnic Russians. Let's look at the first, the Azov battalion's terrorist war on ethnic Russians. How do we know about this? Well, it's been reported in the news. And it's been spoken about by Russian government officials. Yeah, that's the only way we know. We're not there. We find out about it by the news and Russian officials making announcements and pronouncements about it. But wait. Russian atrocities against Ukrainians are also reported in the news and also spoken about by Ukrainian officials. And if you're going to dismiss the Ukrainian stories about Russian misbehaviour, then you'd have to kick out the Russian stories about Ukrainian misbehaviour as well, because it's the same mainstream media. One is Russian mainstream media and the other is Western mainstream media, but it's still mainstream media. Unless, of course, you believe that the Russian press is more truthful than the Ukrainian press or the American press. Now, I know American press is pretty bad, but I do not believe that it is worse than the Russian press. It's also, you'd have to believe that Russian officials never lie and Ukrainians always do. So, seeing as we can't rely on the media to report atrocities correctly, then the antics of the Azov battalion are just as unbelievable as those of the Russian army. For instance, One take on the Bucha massacre was that the Ukrainians murdered fellow Ukrainians for the optics. That being so, then we'd have to believe that Russians are killing Russians in Donbass for the same reason. So the media are unreliable, and this would have to apply in both cases, unless you happen to believe that the Russians are particular saints and the Ukrainians particular devils. Well, one or two of you might believe that, but I doubt most of you do. This means we have to dismiss both of them. The Russians say they invaded because of Donbass and Lugansk, but given the unreliability of the MSM, Donbass and Lugansk would have to be as unreliable as Bucha and Mariupol. Right, all we're left with then is an incontrovertible fact. The one thing we know for sure, Russian tanks rolled into Ukrainian territory. That's the only thing so far that we're certain about. And we have to try to find a reason for that. Let's look at government spokesmen and let's compare what they say. The Russians, well, they say that Ukraine is a fake country that should not exist because, well, it's really historically part of Russia. I got this not from the MSM, but from a report by Dr. Bjorn, what was his name? Alexander Dubin. And he was writing a paper for the London School of Economics, and the London School of Economics is hardly a hotbed of capitalism. I'll leave a link to that report in the description. It's very long, and I can't go through it. But if you want to check on what I'm saying, you can do that. Anyway, Dr. Oh dear, now, what was his name again? Dr. Dubin. As I said, I'm leaving a link in the description. Dubin also says that the Russian version of Ukraine's history as a part of Russia is wildly inaccurate. Now, look, he studies this area. I don't, and I doubt you do, unless you're actually historians. As I said, I can't go through the whole article, but I can put one fact before you out of that article. The word Ukraine means the borderlands, does it not? And the interesting thing about the word Ukraine is that it's not Russian, it's Polish. I suppose you all get the idea that the name of a country, at least the name that's used within that country, is usually determined by the people running it. By that metric, it should be the Poles driving tanks into their lost lands, because Ukraine is obviously Polish historically, or it wouldn't have got that name. But anyway, let's leave that on one side and remind ourselves the Russians invaded Ukraine, giving the reason that it was always part of Russia. And it turns out it wasn't. And even the name isn't Russian. Let's look again at the Russian reasons for invading. The first one is because the Ukrainians were killing ethnic Russians in Donbass and Lugansk. But as we should apply the same standards of skepticism to Russian media as we apply to Western media, all of that's unreliable. So let's go on to the next argument. The next argument is because it was always Russian and needs to be back in the fold, whether it likes it or not. That's just a matter of opinion, isn't it? The Russians may firmly believe that, and they have every right, but the Ukrainians don't. And we have to ask, is this belief a reason to invade another country? I think most people would consider that a very shaky argument on which to base an invasion, but we can't dismiss it entirely. So then let's go on to the third argument. And the third one is because it's a fake that has no validity as a country. Again, that's a matter of opinion, but in this case it's an opinion that's at odds with the United Nations definition of a country, because Ukraine is accepted in the United Nations as an independent country. Still, if the Russians felt strongly about that, there is a remedy of sorts. Why did they not bring this up before the UN as a subject for discussion and a vote? Now, the UN might have discussed it, and it might have rejected it. And then Russia might have invaded. But at least it would have put its case to the world. In this instance, though, Russia didn't put its case to the UN. Russia just put a lot of stuff into its own media, which, as we know, is unreliable, remember, just as is ours. And then, having discussed the matter with itself, it invaded, which is probably not a terrific process upon which to base an invasion. Those are the arguments. Now I'm going to end with a question. Some commenters have made the very valid point that the news reports we're getting are biased. I have no doubt they are, and that they have, for effect, made out that the situation is much worse than it is. And I know that for a fact. You can see they take a photo of a bombed out building and they say Mariupol is flattened and the rest of Mariupol is fine. But you just see this picture of the bombed out building. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I'm saying you see that sort of thing in news reports all the time. And then some have said that the Bucha massacre was committed by the Ukrainian Nazi bands to make the Russians look bad. And as we're not there, as I said, it's impossible for us to be first-hand aware of what's really going on, and considering the bias of the media. Therefore, my question is, if things aren't as bad as they are, and if the Ukrainians are being bullied by their own side, why are they fighting so hard? I mean, they are actually there on the ground. They are the ones who really know what's going on. If they are being shot by roaming Nazis and can see that the Russians are going slowly and carefully for reasons of, human pity, for reasons of care for human life and property, if they see that, why are they fighting tooth and nail to drive the Russians out? Now, the Afghans, for instance, let the Taliban in because they didn't care who was in charge. They were being bullied by their politicians as much as they would be bullied by the Taliban. So they didn't fight. But the Ukrainians obviously do care, and they are fighting. Now, my only thought on that, I mean, there may be another reason, but my only thought on that is that not only do they not want the Russians on their property, but they know what will happen to them if the Russians do get control. That doesn't speak well of the Russians, does it? So this gives you an idea of how I have reached my conclusions about what's going on in Ukraine. And I hope it's helped some people who, seeing the trolls, can't think that their arguments are unreasonable, but can't actually put their finger on what's unreasonable about it. I hope I've helped there. And if anyone has any other suggestions about Ukrainian motives for fighting to the death, please post your comments below, politely. And I'm Graniopteryx. I am on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds, and I am at Graniopteryx on Twitter, Gab and Parler, where I post news about my latest videos. Please click the like button, click the subscribe button and share my videos and support my channel if you can. It would be nice. And till next time. Oh, yeah, and I want to remind you, I won't be posting another video. I probably will miss a couple of days, seeing as I'm having family and friends here for the holidays. Okay, well, yeah, see you. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. go to www.grannyopteryx.com, and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.